You had like a big moment where you sold part of the business. Is that right? Is that
Correct. Last year, we sold a majority stake, a little bit over half, to a private equity firm, Great Hill Partners up in Boston. Incredible partners. I am so grateful and fortunate for that opportunity. They have been game changing in the way that we think about really scaling the business, because we had never taken a lot of capital. We never had venture investors, so we never had a board, right? We were kind of just doing all this stuff on our own up until this point. I think certain bit of skill, certain bit of luck, but they've really helped professionalize the organization and also convince us to like lean in a little harder. I think the reason that we were able to scale to 100 million off of 4 million of capital raised is that we were so laser focused on efficiency, particularly in marketing. We were ROAS positive on first purchase from day one, right? And the lessons that I had learned from, unfortunately, the brands that had come before me, the Birchboxes, the Guilt Groups, the Fab.coms, the Bonobos, some of the brands that didn't have a similar outcome, had to raise a ton of capital to make a lot of the learnings. We learned early on that LTV, if you focus on LTV too early on without enough data, you can end up chasing this number that will never materialize.
Just so that people, let me say what I think you're saying there, and you can correct me or add on to it, because I think it's really important that people don't fully appreciate, because we so often look at the new fundraise, but the list of D2C businesses that had these really high-flying moments in terms of raising over $100 million, getting to $500 million or $1 billion valuation that you just went through, of Fab, of Guilt, of Birchbox, that literally ended up having to
fire sale,
and that none of the team got it.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
And it's because the venture dollars get the money first.
Exactly.
And the venture dollars have this orientation around growth, that they'll look at the LTV of how much money you're going to make over time from a customer, and then based operating off of that number.
Correct.
So you then pummel in and say $100, because it's like, well, within 24 months I'm going to get 150. That's fine, because I'm not worried about my cash flow. But then it ends up being, well, you only got 102, and all the expenses really add on, make the CAC 115. So you've been just burning money to create revenue.
Right. And
so you had a really different experience by raising such a small amount of money, and that you're growing with profit.
Correct. And let me simplify it a little bit more, because this is the thing that I don't think people understand. And this is what, whenever I meet with early stage, consumer businesses, look, consumer businesses aren't new, right? They've been around, for hundreds of years. And the way that consumer businesses work is you buy a product for X, you sell it for Y, and the margin that you make between X and Y is what ultimately should fund growth and drive profit to the bottom line. If you take that simple tried and true formula and you apply it to digital, it shouldn't be any different, right? So you make a product for $50, you sell it for $100, you have $50 to work with to acquire a customer and then cover your OpEx and then, drive profitability. If your focus is on growth, which ours was, you can use fundraising to bridge the gap of covering OpEx. But from a unit economics standpoint, the fundamentals have to work for long-term sustainable growth. At least the way that we viewed it was, if we spend the contribution margin that we have on the product, so again, make a product for 50, sell it for 100. Our hypothesis, which ended up working, was we are willing to spend up to $50 to acquire a customer, break even on first purchase, knowing that in our business with something like socks, it's a wear through item, should have a high degree of repeatability if the product is good, which we knew it was. We will then become profitable when those people come back in month 3, 6, 12, whatever it was.
So your sort of very simple framework was, we can spend our margin on the first purchase, and that's it.
Not a dollar over.
And I think it's important also that with socks, it makes total sense in terms of, if people like the socks, they will buy a lot of them.
Correct. Casper mattresses, for instance, right? Make the product for $400, sell it for $800. I don't know their numbers, but I'm using simple math. the likelihood that someone's going to come back and buy 2, 3, 4, 5 mattresses in the next 12 to 18 months is pretty low. So if I'm running that business, like I want to acquire customers for under $400, right? I want to meaningfully because I want to figure out what my OpEx is, and let's say my OpEx is 20%. So then I want to make sure that 20% of that $400 of margin is going to cover my OpEx, and then I'm going to build in some money for profitability. So what I really want to do is try to target acquiring my customers for like $200.
We just the last podcast that we had was with this this woman who is she's really into profit first, specifically for small business, where you literally create accounts. First, you have to put it into taxes, then you have to put into profit, and then you can put into the others. And that is this. It's a method. She's like a trained profit first person that has worked with thousands of small businesses trying to teach this methodology. And it was fascinating to hear her describe it because it's so far from the venture model, but so applicable to most 90% of our customers are not venture backed, and they're all trying to figure out how to do it. Oftentimes, trying to figure out how do I get more money. Right. Some are get really good at figuring out different types of debt instruments to be able to fund growth at work. Some have figured out venture. Some just keep on growing. But it's very hard to grow an e-commerce business, and your story is, I think, really illustrative of that because of all the different things that came together. Some through good luck, some through a lot of lessons that you had learned through. You really brought a lot to this.
And I want to be clear to say that there is inherent risk with starting a business, right? It's not like there's no formula. There's formulas to there's principles to apply, but just because you apply those principles doesn't mean it's going to work, right? So that's why a lot of businesses fail, because fundamentally either there's no product market fit, the consumer doesn't care, the price point is off, whatever it is, right? But there are also the fundamentals which you have to do along with all of those other things in order to get success.
And I'm sure for you, like now we're looking back on it and it's like, it's really nice, all the things coming together, but there must have been many moments along the way, or at least some moments along the way that you were already going where you were like, fuck, I don't know.
I feel like every Q4 feels that way for us. So we're a business that does 60% of our revenue in November and December.
Wow.
Which is incredibly terrifying and stressful every single year, because you make or break your year, in a couple months. We always say that a bad January can be negated by one good day in November, like the volume that we do. So our whole year is a prep up to that. Mm-hmm. So there are tons of moments, and I think I can one specifically. I remember, I think this was 2016, July, August. We were, I think, 70 or 80% of our spend was on Facebook. And anybody who was running a D2C business at the time will remember this very vividly. Facebook changed their ads algorithm and threw the entire auction platform like way off. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, like, CPAs spiked by like double, and we were like, holy shit, what we were spending before we can't spend, and like our revenue just like got cut by like 40%, and if this is the trend heading into the rest of the year, we're like screwed. And it was this like terrifying moment because it was out of our control. And so that was a lesson learned in diversifying marketing spend channels so that you're not so heavily influenced by a single one.
What is your mix now?
We are about 30% Facebook, 20% TV. I gotta make sure I do the math correctly. That's 50. 20% search, 70. 15% audio, so that's podcast, terrestrial, and Sirius. And then, I think it's like 5% out of home, and then the remaining 10% is made up of like Taboola and Outbreak, some Live Intent, and some smaller, things where like the smaller parts add up to, something.
That's great. And Kate is still going.
Kate's our CMO now and
amazing.
Crushes it. She manages a very big budget.
That is awesome.
Manages a very big budget.
what's coming now for you with big couple months ahead?
We're at this very interesting inflection point in the business where for the last 5.5 years, we were a single product, socks, on a single channel of distribution, our own website. And over the last 12 months, we introduced wholesale in a kind of small way due to a ton of inbound demand, knowing that if we want to ultimately be that $1 billion, now that I see the line of sight to being a $1 billion brand, understanding that omni-channel is really the only way to get there in the next 5 to 7 years. So we're dipping our toe in wholesale, doing the learnings, figuring out which partners are right to work with, figuring out how do we tell our story in kind of a physical environment versus that we don't have control over versus the unlimited palette that we have online to show videos and amazing photographs and tell stories. New product categories. So we launched t-shirts in April of this year. We just launched sweatpants and sweatshirts last week. We'll be launching other product categories coming in early 2020. And then we're talking about international, and then eventually our own retail stores. So we went from single product, single channel to multi-product, multi-channel, multi-geographic.
And what is the brand? Like, describe the brand to me.
Yeah, so Bombas is a comfort-focused apparel brand with predominantly direct-to-consumer that gives back clothing items to those in need. So for every item that we sell, we donate an equivalent item to the homeless community. Socks being the number one most requested item, underwear being number 2, so there's a wink and a nod as to what might be coming down the road there. Tees being number 3, they're all 3 wear-through items, the most requested items. And so, we're figuring out our donation strategy going forward as we start to maybe explore athletic-y type of items. We're obviously not going to, if we ever made a running short, we're not going to donate a pair of running shorts to the homeless community. We can figure out, is it a pair of underwear, right? Or is it something else that they need? But the brand is rooted in altruism. The word Bombas is derived from the Latin word for bumblebee. Bees are our spirit animal. It's our logo. Our tagline is Be Better. Bees are altruistic animals. They work together as a hive to make their world a better place. That applies both to our company culture as well as to how we treat our customers, as well as to how do we treat our non-paying customers of the homeless community. And I think that mentality has really resonated all the way through. And I think of everything that's outwardly facing, obviously there's a ton of pride in our growth. And, we just donated our 25 millionth pair of socks to the homeless community. We have 2,700 giving partners throughout the country that rely on us to give them, socks every month. But the stuff that doesn't make it outwardly facing is, and probably the thing I'm almost most proud of, is the culture that we've built. We have 130 employees, been in business for 6 years, and we've only ever had 4 people voluntarily leave. And of those 4, only 1 person left for another job. The other 3 left for, to go back at their school or move closer to home. And that is, I think, a testament also to our efficiency and how we've grown. We've never suffered from turnover. So we're a super, super tight-knit team that is very, very good at working together.
Since charitable giving is such a central piece of the business, how do you model that?
It was kind of in the DNA of our business from day one, right? It was the catalyst for the idea, right? I didn't say I wanted to start a sock company, right? I started out because I wanted to solve this problem in my community. And so when we first thought about building the financial model, which I think any pragmatic entrepreneur, that's where you should start, we had to figure out if we could make the margins work. And so from day one, we said, okay, for every sock we sell, we're going to sell another, donate another sock. And when we started, it was the same sock, which helped give us economies of scale. But over time, we actually realized that there was a better sock to donate for the homeless community, one that didn't have colors, right? They wanted, darker colors to minimize visible wear. We added an antimicrobial treatment. We reinforced the seams so they last longer. And now when we're producing, 10 million pairs of our donation sock, that becomes a much, we get so massive economies of scale and efficiency is that becomes a much lower cost item for us, even though the product quality is equal, if not better, than our core product. But we just modeled it in, right? There was never a world in which Bombas existed without making that a part of what we do. And it's actually, in some ways, it's been a great lever for us because, anytime we've had, leftover size runs or bought inventory, we can find the right donation partners to, so if we have too many dress socks, we do a work readyment program. So, we'll find people who are working in the homeless community that help get people, jobs and, give them our dress socks. If we have too many kids, we work with, at-risk youth and so on and so forth. So it's actually become a really great financial mechanism. So we never have to go on sale. We never have to sit on dead inventory. We never have to put it through things like TJ Maxx. But yeah, it's just been built in from day one.
And that's part of also having a high margin product.
Yes, I mean it's totally. I mean, if you made cars, you couldn't donate a car for every car you sold. It's a low margin business. It's not going to work. But apparel has high margins and generally, so. And
socks in particular?
Socks in particular, probably the highest margin category of any apparel item.
As you move into these new items, are you like, whoa, that's a lot of the...
It's taken a hit on our IMUs, but again, in early days...
What are IMUs?
So, I actually don't even know what it stands for, but it's basically like margin. It's like with the merchants and plannings on our teams, this is what they always talk about. So it's the first thing that came to my head. It's like initial markup, I think is what it stands for, is basically your margin that you have. But, if we're introducing a product that has a lower margin, but it represents 5 to 10% of our business, our 90% sock business at such large scale can help support that until that business gets to scale. And then hopefully we get those same efficiencies as we go forward.
People come to you often looking for advice on how to build a successful D2C e-commerce business.
Yep.
We've gotten some of the tidbits of advice. What to you sometimes when someone comes makes you think they're going to figure this out?
The will to learn, right, and the desire to be super scrappy. I think when I meet entrepreneurs that either think they have all the answers or think that they'll just figure it all out, like, I don't know, we'll just start and we'll figure it all out. Rather, those who are very diligent about the process of learning and saying, okay, I've got this question, or there's this part of the business that I don't understand. Before I dive into it, I'm going to go out and try to learn everything I can to know about it. I want to learn from the people who have done it really well. I want to learn from the people who've done it really poorly. I want to learn from the successes, the failures, and then I want to figure out how to take what I've learned from them and then apply it to my business in a very pragmatic and practical way. The people who keep asking a lot of questions are the ones that I think, I generally have a sense for, are going to figure it out. Because that's what being an entrepreneur is, right? Like, you have a problem, you figure it out. You have another problem, you figure it out, right? You're just like a series of ongoing problem solving. And, when you've never done it before, I didn't know what it was going to be like onboarding 70 people in a 6-month period of time, but we figured it out, right? Because we talked to other people. I called Jeff Rader at Harry's and was like, what was it like when you scaled? I'm still leaning on people who've done it before me, right? I take all of my ego, I take all of my pride, I put it into a box, and I become super vulnerable, and I say, I don't know what I'm doing. What do I do? How do I figure this out? Here's my problem. Here are my questions. What have you done? How can I apply what you've done to what I'm doing?
For someone just getting going right now, is in a saturated space, and they may not even be wanting to get to a $50 million business. They want to get to a business that supports their life.
Sure. But by the way, there's no. This is the other thing. There's no shame in running. I have plenty of friends that run $6 million businesses who make $1.5 million a year. Right? Like the idea, and this again, I think the shame of the venture world, or what I don't like that they've done is they've prophesized that in order to be successful, you have to have $1 billion brand, right? It has to be worth $1 billion, or else who cares? Oh yeah, small, you're running your small little business over there. That's bullshit, right? I know plenty of small business owners who work the life that they want to work. They don't, they're not working, 7 days a week. They go and spend plenty of time with their friends and family and still make enough money to live comfortably and actually have a really great life. And you don't need to, honestly, you don't need to make $1 million a year to have a really, you make a couple $100,000 a year and have a really great life.
So, okay. So for that person, that represents, I think, the majority of the people that we work with. Mm-hmm. They get so stretched thin in terms of the number of different things that are competing for their focus. Is there's like a hierarchy of things that you could go after, and it's very stage specific. But if you were to sort of be sitting down with someone, what's the first thing that you want to understand about their business to begin assessing what matters most for them?
Sure. I mean, the general piece of advice that is going to underpin what I'll go into here is the idea around just focus, right? Especially when you have no resources or limited resources. The resources are you and maybe a few other people and not a lot of dollars. Being really good at one thing and figuring out that one problem, and then moving on to the next thing is so crucial to, I think, growing any early stage business. Again, some of the best advice I got from Blake Makowski, who's the founder of Tom's, he was so grateful to give me a piece of his time early on. And I remember, I'll never forget this. He said, we sold one silhouette of a shoe in 4 colors for the first 3.5 years, right? And built a very big business off of that. Right? You don't need to get distracted about, being here and being there, or, this product's not working, so we're going to develop another product and put it. It's like really, really just invest in one thing, try to tell one story. The customer can't, they can only absorb so many, features and benefits. Or it's like Warby's a great example too. They started with $99 eyewear, try at home, free returns, the technology platform of seeing and then they had the 1-for-1 movement. They ended up, while they still do 1-for-1, they dropped it from their brand messaging because it started to become too much. So if I'm sitting down with an entrepreneur first time, I want to understand, first of all, what have they learned so far that's working, right? What customers are who's buying their product? Mm-hmm. Why do they love it, right? Where did they hear about it? And then, figuring out what triggered them to buy. And then kind of trying to go as deep into that. So let's say it's, moms on Facebook, right? Before you start to try to go after, the young kids, or, be on Instagram stories or be on TikTok or the next new platform that's coming out, try to go super, super, super deep and focused into that one area until you've kind of tapped out on, the growth opportunity there, and then move to the next hypothesis. Again, it goes back to this idea of setting a series of hypotheses based on the information that you have directionally, and then trying to prove out those hypotheses at scale. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it does.
Okay.
Where you went was in addition to this, the meta thing around focus is who's buying this? Who's your customer right now, and really understanding that, and how they're learning about it.
And an important point on that is, and this is the beauty of D2C, right? Is because you have that direct relationship with your customer, is who is your customer, not who do you, back in the day when you start a business, you'd always say well, here's the demographic of customer that I want to go after. I think it's a lesson that we learned in direct to consumer, is that sometimes the customer, will dictate who they are to you, mm-hmm. right? And so we had set out being young 30-year-old guys living in New York City, wanting to create this hip, cool brand among, millennials and, 20-somethings, where, Bombas socks are going to be the hot, cool thing on every college campus and whatever. And you know what it was? Men and women over 40 years old, buying for their household. Their kids wear it, they wear it. They see it as being aspirationally young, as a way to kind of stay cool and relevant. Yeah, we have some demos in the, in the 20s and teens and 30s, but our core demo is high income, high disposable income, college educated, urban, in these, who care about brand and product. And so we naturally leaned into that, rather than saying oh, well, that's a subset of our customer base, but really who we are is we want to be a celebrity brand, and we want, we just leaned really heavy into what the data was telling us, you know? And I find that, you know, Warby will tell you the same thing. I mean, maybe not, you know, they don't probably market it outwardly, but I remember talking to them early on, and they were like, women over 45. That's who our core demo is. They haven't bought new frames in a really long time. And, you know, they are past the point where they want to spend $400 or $500 to look cool. They now have an option to spend $99, feel relevant while being a part of a cool brand. And so that's where they're putting their dollars.
I mean, for some people, it's like just trying to get to that point where they have enough data.
That's the chasm that's super hard to cross. I mean, that's why, you know, you look at the failure rate. Right. Most of it happens early on, and this goes back to like it's not always gonna work, right? Like
it's not always gonna work. It's very hard to you really can't architect it completely beforehand. You can just follow a set of these types of principles that we're talking about,
right?
And then I think
you have to have an idea.
You have to have an idea.
And I don't mean just an idea for the product. You have to have an idea of who your product might resonate with, and you start there.
So our first principle in the 9 principles of building a healthy e-commerce business is finding your white space.
Yeah, like if I had a dog food brand, I'm not gonna go try to market it to cat people, right?
Definitely, that would not work so well. It's interesting because it's like you think you know what it is, and then you learn a little bit more as you start to actually find it. There's a diligence thing that some people really bring to the table in terms of developing the product and understanding where in the market it plays, and just a passion that has to be coming to create that level of diligence. Like we've had this one guy on twice now who has this business box too. That's a shipping. It's like Japanese snacks of the month. And it's this guy who spent a while in Japan and just fell in love with Japanese cuisine, and so he's got that passion around it, and then so much diligence around like what would the exceptional box experience be that he just brings to it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to lean into what your natural skill set is well, like early on, if that is your only resource. So like Randy, coming out of Urban Daddy and coming out of the creative agency world, is an incredible storyteller, right? He's very, very good with copy. That's his magic sauce. Aaron, who's another one of my co-founders, is like the same thing, but on the design side. So he makes beautiful aesthetic. And so the two of them combined, you know, on the brand side, we knew that we had brand in our back pocket from day one. You know, my skill set was that like I came from sales, and I think I understand, you know, customer behavior as a consumer, right? So I see how people are, you know, behaving. And then my other co-founder, my brother, you know, started as our CFO, and he's the reason that we, you know, made it to $100 million with $4 million in the bank, because he was so diligent about cash flow and, you know, costing, and we didn't move into fancy, you know, office space, and we didn't make every hire that we wanted to make. So like, we used the skills that we had and leaned into them, and then picked up people along the way, like Kate, who was really good at understanding the data side of customers, and then, you know, started to add all the different pieces that layered on. But when your resources are limited, like lean on what you know, try to learn what you don't, and stay focused on one thing that you're trying to basically prove out. And if that thing doesn't work out, if that doesn't prove out, move on to the next thing. Again, you can only do that so many times until you ultimately have to say like, okay, maybe this just doesn't work, and then move on to something else.
What's life like for you these days? Because you're in a very different, you got a 150 person company now?
130
person company
by the end of the year.
What's going on?
So this year, and kind of just generally, I think we're in this incredible stage where, you know, we're starting to get and bring on really specialized talent, right, at the kind of director level throughout different parts of the organization. It was a massive lesson for me, and kind of there's this great article called, you know, Letting Go of Your Legos. It's a first round capital. You can find it on their blog. It's fantastic. We send it around to every new hire. One of the things that we learned at Urban Daddy, you know, as amazing and as inspiring as the CEO and founder was, he had a really hard time letting things go, and he ended up becoming a massive bottleneck. And so my focus over the last year is really trying to remove myself from the things, trust the team that I have. And not surprisingly, these people are very good at what they do because, we're a great organization. We're attracting great talent. And when you hire great talent and then give them the room to run, they will surprise you in the most positive way every single time. So I'm removing myself more from the day-to-day, really trying to shift my focus to thinking about 24, to 36 months out, where when you're early on and it's just a few of you, you're thinking day by day, looking at the numbers every single day, and then it moves to week by week, then month by month, then quarter by quarter, then year by year. And now I don't even really spend a ton of time thinking. In the past, that's what my CFO does. I spend my time thinking, okay, how are we going to get from $100 million to $500 million to $1 billion? And what are the building blocks I have to put in today in order to help make that happen? Mm-hmm. And so it's fun, it's letting go and delegating and watching people grow and step up, and it's probably the most rewarding aspect of all of this, maybe outside of the charitable giving side of our brand. But so that's what I do. Yeah. And also I think learning that I don't have to be involved in everything, and that actually it's better for me and for the company for me to actually find time to myself, take vacation, not unplug on the weekends, not work all-nighters, and create that space where I have the ability to really think big picture, and get myself out of the day-to-day, get myself out of my inbox, go for a hike somewhere and just what if we did this?
Big ride ahead.
Yeah, totally. It's exciting, and it's the other adage too, which is because we're getting bigger, it feels way more public, and it feels like the stakes are so much higher. But we've got a amazing team, solid financial foundation. We'll see how some of these things shake out.
Excited for you.
Thank you.